Hi, welcome to the presentation on Chapter 3. In this chapter, we will look at the concepts covered, such as the Hawthorne theories, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and the managerial grid at the end of the chapter. So let's start with the Hawthorne studies. As you know from the book, they were conducted by Elton Mayo and his research team from Harvard between 1924 and 1933. The goals and interests of the studies were consistent with Frederick Taylor. Remember him? He had the classical management theory of scientific management, and his focus was on worker output. Watch the video that I have inserted here. It's a great summary of the Hawthorne studies. And then think about the Hawthorne effect. So, worker output increased as a result of attention paid to the employees while the studies were being conducted, and this is thought to be the Hawthorne effect. However, other researchers have examined the results and found that Mayo and his colleagues were not necessarily correct in their conclusion that productivity increases should be attributed to social factors, management style. The researchers found that more traditional explanations, such as incentives, pressure from managers, and work selections, are better explanations for the Hawthorne effect findings. However, because of the Hawthorne studies, researchers, managers, and others started turning away from the mechanical view of employees, employee man as machine, and started considering human needs and social interaction in organizational work. So the Hawthorne studies did have a great effect on the way that managers think. This brought us to the move to human relations movement. So with the human relations approach, you look at the assumptions that if you treat employees well, they should like their jobs and therefore be productive. So you see these assumptions that I have outlined on the page, on the slide. Look at figure 3.1 in your textbook as well. But research that was done about the human relations approach has not upheld these conclusions. Because people are complex and there are many factors that affect job satisfaction, productivity, and organizational connection, the way employees feel about the organization. So think about that a little bit. These are very abstract ideas in the human relations approach. Let's look at two theorists who are proponents of the human relations approach. That's Abraham Maslow and Douglas McGregor. You may have encountered Maslow's hierarchy of needs in other courses because it's a very popular theory. And I think about it too as it applies to myself as I've moved through my education and my career. And maybe when you look at the hierarchy, you can see it in that way in your career and in your personal life. But the basic idea about the hierarchy is that lower order needs, such as food and shelter, have to be fulfilled before higher order needs can be met. So watch the TED Talk that I've inserted here, Measuring What Makes Life Work. It's a great talk. I think it's about 18 minutes. It's a contemporary application of Maslow's hierarchy, and it's delivered by Chris Connolly, who's a hotel owner in San Francisco. But it's really interesting, and I like the contemporary application of the theory. So let's move on and look at McGregor's theory of X and Y managers. So in 1960, McGregor wrote a book titled The Human Side of Enterprise, and this contained his view of two types of managers, Theory X and Theory Y. So think about it. Have you ever had a Theory X or Theory Y manager? A Theory X manager is influenced by the most negative aspects of classical management. This manager has the fundamental belief that humans want to avoid work. Employees don't need to be rewarded for working, and managers must prod employees along to finish their work. Have you ever had a manager like that? They, I think there's a term for them called micromanagers. They oversee everything, and they just basically think that people are there because they have to be, not because that they enjoy the work. Theory Y managers, on the other hand, adhere more to the idea of human relations movement. They have a participative style of management in which they include employees because they believe that employees will exercise self-control and self-direction in helping achieve organizational goals. So they think that employees are at work because they want to be and because they're more enthusiastic about the organizational goals that need to be met. Theory Y managers also believe that work is a way to reach achievement and self-respect, or if you're looking at Maslow's hierarchy, those esteem needs. And Theory Y managers believe that managers have to be innovative and motivate their employees. So in other words, they engage with their employees. And they, in a way, serve as a coach and a mentor to their employees. McGregor and Maslow agreed that employees must be treated as humans that need attention, social interaction, and need to feel a sense of achievement. So making a high salary is not the only motivator in life. There's more to extrinsic rewards, and there's also intrinsic motivation, which is what motivates us from the inside. Do you see how the idea of a man as machine of classical management was slowly falling away by this point? So we had theorists who were focusing more on our human side instead of just being mechanical and getting the work done. So I talked about the Theory X manager, and here is the slide on that. I love the last comment about how Theory X managers think employees are gullible. That's so terrible. Also, Theory Y managers think that people only use part of their intellectual capabilities. So they have much more of a capacity to bloom and to fulfill those needs on Maslow's hierarchy of need. Humans are imaginative, and they have lots of ingenuity, and that's not rare, that's just normal, the way that Theory Y managers see employees. So the human relations approach served as the springboard for the human resources idea or approach. From the 50s to the 70s, there began this feeling that the model of employee needs was insufficient for describing the complexities of organizational life because, as you know, there's more to just going to work and showing up. There's all the interpersonal communication that takes place and being able to take direction from a manager, being able to get your tasks done, getting along with coworkers, and meeting organizational goals. So during this time, from the 50s to the 70s, there was much more emphasis and interest on the cognitive contributions of employees. In other words, employees are smart and they can make their own contributions to the organization, so managers should ask. There's evidence that many of the human relation ideas do not hold up when tested, so that's what led us into the human resources approach. So two influential, HR theories, human resources theories are Blake and Mouton's managerial leadership grid and Leichert's system for management theories. So on this grid, we have the managerial leadership grid, which is figure 3.2 in your book. And this says that leaders are most effective when they combine concern for people with concern for production. And looking at the grid, you'll see that concern for people runs from 1, the lowest, to 9, the highest, just as concern for production is the same. So you have 5 prototypes of managers. You'll see that on page 49 in your book, but you also see them on the grid. So you have the impoverished management, which has low concern for production and very low concern for people. And you compare that to the highest on the grid, a team manager who has high concern for production, but also has high concern for people. And then there's these other 3 here. The country club manager and the middle of the road manager and the authority compliance manager. Look at table 3.1 for an explanation of communication flows in organizations, and it shows the difference between organizations that use classical human relations and human resources approaches. I also want you to look on page 55 for Pfeffer's 7 Practices of Successful Organizations. There's a question on the discussion board about that, so be sure and look at that chart. I think the terms on there are self-explanatory. So that was a quick presentation today. So that wraps up the slides. But now I want you to look at the discussion assignment for Chapter 3, which is the Marshall's Processing Plant, where I'm asking you to apply the theories that I've just covered, skimmed through, and the principles. And for all these case studies and these discussion boards, I want you to think creatively. So think creatively how to apply these theories. Very rarely are there right or wrong answers. What I want you to do, which I'm sure you've heard a lot in your college classes, is to think critically and apply the information at hand. All right, that wraps up Chapter 3. I will see you guys online.